Good afternoon to everybody. It's a little bit after 12 noon here. I'm Debbie Rogers. I'm the Executive Director of NCFADS. Delighted to have you folks with us today. We have, believe it or not, over 775 people who registered and over 400 people went on the waiting list. This is clearly our first time for doing anything like this, so we are delighted again to have you with us. Many of you are very familiar with NCFADS, have been to our schools before, but we also have a number of folks here who have never been involved with us, so we are delighted to have you with us for today and hopefully the rest of this week too. A couple things I want to mention to you. Again, as I just indicated, many people are only on for one day. Most of the people are on for the entire week. So you're going to hear, if you're here for the entire week, you're going to hear me make announcements at the same time every week, just because not everybody's going to hear them at the same time. I did want to take a special moment to thank our generous sponsors for providing their support so that we can offer this school to you free of charge. So we are delighted to be able to do that. The board of directors was very pleased to be able to do this. Also, too, we are in the process of planning for our winter school 2021, which is in February. We are hopeful that we'll be able to have that. Please check our website, and as usual, emails will be coming out about that much later on. So I want to let you know about that. Also, too, if anybody has any questions or technical issues, post them in the Q&A box, and one of our staff will respond to your needs. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn the morning over, or the afternoon over, to our president of our board, Dr. Sean Ricks.
So I want to echo what Debbie said and welcome you all. This is so exciting. We had no, of course, idea that we would be doing an alternate format, but the flexibility of the board and the numbers that we have registered really indicate that maybe this format might be something that we incorporate moving forward. So it's with great glee that I welcome you to this whole week of wonderful presenters and wonderful opportunities to deepen your knowledge and to get some training. But I'm super excited that I pulled, I don't know if it was the short straw or the long straw, or it's hard for me to concentrate with Carlton making faces, but anyway, I pulled some type of straw and I get, oh, you can see me now. All right, so great. But anyway, I have the pleasure of introducing Carlton Hall, who, Carlton, aren't you from Philly too? Aren't we both from Philly?
We are indeed. City of brotherly love and sisterly affection.
You know, that was too much. Anyway, so Carlton and I had the pleasure of hearing him, I think, at our last winter school, and he was fabulous. And then we connected over geography as well. He's the president and CEO of Carlton Hall Consulting and has done consulting for corporations and individuals around the world. So this is a real treat for you all to get an opportunity to glean his expertise. We're so thankful to have him with us, and we just knew that he would be the perfect person to kind of kick off our tone for this week. So Carlton, another person from Philly, not that I'm reading the chat box, I'm sorry, I got distracted, but I mean, it's like a club, you know, like we're a really thick club. But anywho, I'm going to turn it over with great pleasure to Carlton, and I'll let you set what I know is going to be a great tone for trainings for the week. Carlton?
Sean, Dr. Ricks, thank you so very, very, very much. And you do look fabulous. You do.
Yeah.
So in the interest of time, thank you for that introduction. I truly appreciate it. I want to share with you that I'm thankful for everyone. I'm thankful that Dr. Ricks in her introduction shared some of our achievements, but I'm so grateful that she did not share all of what she could have shared. On the last time that I had the opportunity to speak to this wonderful organization, it was at the winter school. And the winter school, which always takes place in Greensboro, North Carolina, went on, and I was so honored to be asked and invited to participate in that wonderful occasion, except for the fact that in setting my own travel plans, I got an airplane ticket and flew to Greenville, North Carolina. And so I want to thank her for leaving that off of the bio that she shared with you. But I want to let her and everyone else know that the next time I have the opportunity, I will come prepared. I searched all over the internet and I found a resource that is sure to help me, because it is guaranteed to help those when you absolutely need to know the difference between your Greenvilles and your Greensboros. And so with that in mind, I offer my thanks again for this opportunity. I was honored to be asked to be the lead-off keynote for this wonderful occasion of the summer school until I saw that you all held this virtual countdown that was happening live. And I don't know about you, but I grew up on action movies and action films and action TV shows. And I can tell you from my experience, whenever that countdown got down to 0, it was never typically a good thing. So I hope we're going to be able to change that dynamic today. But in all seriousness, it is my esteemed pleasure and honor to have this opportunity to speak to all of you all, to be invited by this extraordinary organization. The foundation has done such extraordinary work. I am grateful to all the leaders, Dr. Ricks, Aaron, Michael, all of the board members, Virginia, and Debbie, thank you so much for your help and your support in making this happen. I am here also on behalf and representing the Southeast Prevention Technology Transfer Center. I'm grateful to the leadership of Dr. Mark Wolfson, Dr. Kimberly Wagner, and Nicole Augustine, who, as colleagues, we are working constantly looking at how we might be able to build and help the capacity of those that are working in prevention for the Southeast region of the U.S. And so being here, being a part of this is a great honor for me. Because I am also here representing the Southeast PTTC as well as my organization, CHC, I must say that some of the funds that are supporting my ability to do this comes from the great gratitude towards this Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. And as a result of that, I am obligated to share with you that the views expressed during my webinar do not necessarily represent the views, policies, and positions of SAMHSA, and so therefore they are off the hook of anything that I happen to share as we move forward. But I do want to move forward, and so with that, I am privileged to have with me as ostensibly a co-presenter with me, my friend and my colleague, Dave Clausen. Dave, among all the other things that he does, is the co-lead for the Mid-America Prevention Technology Transfer Center. Extraordinary and extensive experience working with the prevention field for our nation. He is a leading and influencing voice for our field in this country, and I'm honored to have him as part of the team that helps us to do this work across the country. Dave will be supporting this presentation, and I'm going to ask him if he wouldn't mind sharing with you how you and others can participate and interact with and throughout this presentation. Dave, take it away.
All right, what an introduction. Thank you very much. I've already been chatting it up with several of y'all in the chat box. Glad to see that you have found that. For folks that might be new to the Zoom platform, across the bottom of your screen, you'll see you have the controls for chat. You can raise your hand, or there's a Q&A. We'll be using all of these features throughout this session because this isn't your ordinary webinar. It's a very dynamic and engaging conversation that will be carried out throughout the length of this session, both through Carlton and these slides, but then also in the chat box. So we want you to go ahead and find that chat box right now if you can, and drop a note and say hi. And I'll be the one hanging out in that chat box talking with y'all. So looking forward to engaging. Let's have a great session. Carlton, back to you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks. To that degree, I am encouraging everyone. We're going to do something a bit different as we go through the presentation. There will be opportunities and times where I will prompt you with questions that I hope can facilitate a conversation and a discussion, and that you all might be able to have among yourselves within the chat, and leaders like Dave and Virginia and others will engage with you in that conversation. But all of this is from a sense of understanding that we will be able to learn with and from each other in the course of this delivery. I know you are all into your individual homes and the like, but think of this as one huge conference room where you are able to have conversations with some of the folks that are as passionate about this issue as you are, and let's take advantage of that. To that degree, I want to start off, actually, for those of you who may have been with me during our winter school presentation, I want to start off kind of where I left off at the winter school. I shared with you all at that time that I had the extraordinary opportunity to work with the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, NADEC, as they are referred to, which is an extraordinary organization, all kind of with the intent of building the capacity of communities across our nation to pay attention to the most vulnerable in our population, which are our children. And to protect them from the dangers that are associated with the issues of drug use, possession, manufacturing, and all the things that those of you who took the time out to be on this training session all care about. While I was delivering at their conference, the Drug Enforcement Administration released a report. And this is what struck me, released a report that the saturation of opioid pills and prescriptions that kind of had overwhelmed our nation, producing an epidemic that we are all very familiar with, was actually much worse than had originally been identified. And in fact, as this illustration speaks to, in counties across our nation, they were dealing with the severity of the overprescribing practices that had taken place in our nation. In fact, if you look at this picture, everywhere you see purple represents that there is real challenge, real trouble there. This represented a way to say that within our home, there are dangers that are affecting the most vulnerable in our communities and our populations. I shared with the folks that were there with me in Greensboro that one of the reasons why this struck me so hard is because in the last few years, my life has changed dramatically. In the last few years, I and my wife became grandparents for the first time. In fact, 3 years ago, my son and his wife gave birth to our grandson, Ethan, our first, and then 10 days later, my daughter actually gave birth to twins. And so we went from 0 to 3 in 10 days. And as incredible as that is, my son and his wife gave us the privilege of having a 4th grandchild just a year later. And so we now have 4. I shared that information with you to let you know that the entirety of what I pay attention to, the entirety of what I feel is important, is really guided by the fact that I care desperately about my grandchildren. And in fact, when I visit with them, I find something interesting that caused me to pause. When I visit with my grandchildren in their homes, I notice that no matter the fact that I have multiple degrees, I, for the life of me, can't figure out how to open up this gate that is preventing me from going downstairs. I'm having challenges when I want a midnight snack. I can't seem to facilitate opening up the cabinets. I can't call anyone because my cell phone dies, because I haven't figured out how to charge my phone. And yes, even in the most sensitive of places, there are things that are restricting my access to it. Quick question for everyone. In the context of this environment, who is the priority? If you don't mind, please put in the chat box who you believe the priority here is in this environment. Dave, are you getting any responses?
Yes, the child, babies, the grandchildren,
Of course.
the toddlers. Oh yes, flowing in, loving the engagement.
So there is absolutely zero doubt who the priority is in the context of this environment. There is absolutely zero doubt that the priorities were who are the most vulnerable in this setting. They prioritize the most vulnerable. And what they were able to identify were all the areas in which their vulnerabilities were going to be and endanger them the most. And what I would ask of you is, in this setting, in this analogy, is this a reactive or a proactive response? Please put in the chat box.
Proactive, proactive, proactive. Keep them coming, proactive.
And the point being here that prevention should always be proactive. Prevention should always be overt. I'm gonna tell you right now, no matter the fact that I think that as grandfather, that the clouds should open up, that the heavens should speak, that trumpets should blare whenever I go to my children's homes, I am not the priority. They couldn't care less about what I feel and about my comfort and about what's normal for me, that all of the focus and all of the attention and all of the priority is exclusively to those that are the most vulnerable. And I would suggest that for us in our society, if we're going to rectify this picture, we need to ensure that for our nation, prevention is overt, prevention is blatant, prevention is intrusive, prevention is very clear about who the priorities are. And if we are going to do that and do that well, we are finding ourselves in this time the need to build bridges between public health and criminal justice, right? And if we are building these bridges between public health and criminal justice, my suggestion is that prevention is the cornerstone for that bridge. And we need to think clearly about how we position ourselves to be that cornerstone in this bridge making. Because as Dr. King indicated, we are living in some challenging times. And there is a need and ought to be a fierce urgency with the times that we are in and our responsiveness to it. We are living in a time when at the same time as the greatest number of overdose deaths are occurring in our nation's recorded history, we are also confronted with the greatest push for legalization of drug use in our nation's history. We are living in challenging times, urgent times. Part of what it is that I want to share with you, part of what it is that we are going to discuss today in terms of how we respond to these times is built upon the fact that I've had the remarkable privilege of working around this nation with great partners such as the Drug Enforcement Administration and others that are leading an effort to address the engagement of community in these important times. And the reason why that's so vital for us, I'm going to illustrate. I shared with you the report that was provided by the DEA. I also would share with you that back on August 16th of 2018, the CDC came out with their latest report indicating that the issues and the challenges were ever increasing, right? And as a response to that, leaders across the nation were trying to engage their community in that conversation, how to respond appropriately to the rising number of deaths and consequences that were occurring in our country. In this particular county, and you can tell that I've lived in the DC area far too long because I've started to redact everything. But in this particular county, the top law enforcement official in the county, their acting prosecutor, decided he was going to convene a meeting because of the challenges in his county. Can anyone write in the chat box as you look at this picture, what's wrong with this picture? Dave?
Yes, I'm watching, giving them a moment to check in. Okay, empty seats, not enough people, no diversity, empty chairs. Looking at a theme there.
Incredible, incredible, right? And I can tell you right now, because I know this group, I'll let you know that this woman right here actually works for that man. So the picture is actually worse than what is presented here. You're exactly right. And what this calls for our attention to be placed upon is that there is a new kind of conversation that I'm suggesting is needed and necessary, right? Because the onus of why those seats aren't filled, the onus of why folks are not participating at the level that we believe they should participate, I suggest that the onus is upon those of us in our field, and that we are charged with having a new kind of conversation, and that conversation has to be about engagement, right? And so that's really what it is that I want to share and talk about today as I speak about transformational leadership for prevention during this crucial time in our nation's history. And so we're going to be engaged in a number of things as we have this conversation. I like, and for folks who have been with me in the past, I like to engage folks with a bit of fun as I'm doing that. But believe me, everything that I do hopefully will have a point to it. And so I want to engage you in this activity right here, and I will share with you that there will be a point to it. As you're looking at the screen, please in the chat box, if this were an actual shirt that you were looking at, how many holes are you seeing? How many holes are you looking at?
4, 8, 6, 2, 7, 4, 8, 5, 6, 6, 8, 2.
Thanks, Dave. I'm only going to give them about 15 seconds to do that because, listen, folks, I don't know if we're all looking at the same shirt or not, but the actual number is 8. Let's go through it. If this were our hole, we would be actually seeing 2 holes here, one in the front, one in the back. Here's another 2 holes, one in front, one in the back, that's 4. And if we were actually going to put our head through it, that would be a hole here. That's 5. Put our body through it, that's 6. And 2 on either arm for the sleeves, that's a total of 8. So I don't know if we're looking at the same shirt or not, but there are 8 holes that you're actually looking at. Why did I mention this? There is an adage that is in our communities that is an old adage that simply says that if you can't see a problem, you can't solve that problem. And I'm suggesting through the course of this conversation that there are actual holes, gaps in what we are attending to in our national discourse, in our national conversation, that if we aren't able to see them and attend to them, we can't truly solve them. Many of us are participating in grant opportunities such as from the Office of Victims of Crime, looking at how we might be able to build the capacity of those serving our youngest victims of crime. Those of you who are participating in the Drug-Free Communities program, forming community coalitions across our nation, and looking at how we might be able to build the capacity of engaging our communities in this work. Those of you who are participating in the Partnerships for Success grants that are being offered by SAMHSA through this. All of these and many others are requiring of us a particular kind of way to engage with with their grant opportunities. They are requiring us to engage the broader community and bring the broader community to the science that we all know is important to solving and mitigating the issue. That's really the goal of these grants, right? And so those are requiring us a specific kind of leadership. There is a great deal of literature, and what I'm proposing to you all is that the kind of leadership that is required to be effective with the opportunities that are presented to us is a leadership that is referred to as transformational leadership. It is a collaborative style of leadership. It is a different kind of leadership than simply being a CEO for an organization or the executive director of a nonprofit. In a real sense, it is a tactical approach towards addressing the issue and the challenge that you are facing by being able to facilitate a process of engaging, right? Where in the process of doing that, you're increasing both for the leaders and those that you are trying to reach out to an increased sense of motivation, inspiration, and morality that really fashions a way to approach the issue, right? If you think about transformational leaders, you think about how and what are the characteristics. We know them when we see them, right? If I were to ask you, what are some of the characteristics that would make up for a transformational leader? In your view, what are some of those practical, observable characteristics? What would you say? Please put some in the chat.
Honesty, charisma, visionary, active
Right.
listener, open-minded,
No.
ability to see the whole problem. Great stuff coming in.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? And so as we think about this, I will offer you that when we look and we think about prevention leadership and what's necessary for prevention, why is it that when our country is hit with one of the most extensive crises that we have ever experienced in our nation's history, the involvement and the engagement of others is so challenged? We are faced with the notion that we are not exhibiting in a real sense, in a practical sense, in a strategic sense, in an effective way, the ability to do certain things, such as articulate a vision clearly, right? Such as serving as role models. You all have shared some of this, such as the ability to build trust. And how does that relate to our ability to engage others in the things that we feel that are valuable and important to discussion? Such as promoting the opportunity for peer problem solving, looking at the way to build inclusion and involvement in our work, in our efforts, looking at giving meaning to the coalition. These are some of the characteristics that transformational leaders within the context of prevention I'm recommending need to be looking to. But this doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by just hoping for it. And it doesn't happen simply because you put together a job description and you invite folks to take on a role or position. It is really around what Simon Sinek, and those of you who know his work, suggest why people don't buy what you do, they buy the why you do it. We have to get better at expressing the why of our work, the why of our circumstance. And so in order to do that, I'm suggesting to you, and I'm going to utilize this shirt analogy throughout the context of my delivery of this presentation, because I believe that it is analogous to the challenges that we face. I think that as preventionists, as those that are in the work of public health, and those of us who are working towards mitigating addiction, I think that what we are charged with doing is we are charged with identifying the holes, the gaps in our nation's understanding around the issues that we care desperately about, and beginning to mend those holes. But as I indicated earlier, if we aren't attentive to the holes, if we can't see the holes ourselves, we cannot amend them appropriately. And so where are some of those holes in our understanding? I would suggest to you that the challenge begins with some of our thinking around where we are in this context. I love this quote that was offered by a president of the United States. It says that one problem meriting special attention deals with the growing abuse of non-narcotic drugs, including barbiturates and amphetamines. Here's where the key relevant point is. Society's gains will be illusory if we reduce the incidence of one type of drug dependence only to have new kinds of drugs substituted, right? Illusory if we reduce one kind of incidence of one kind of drug only to have new kinds of drugs substituted. It's what I referred to as the whack-a-mole approach towards mitigating substance misuse that we as a nation has been involved and invested in. We have to change that. Why do we have to change that? Because we are having a challenge with understanding and articulating which direction we're actually going. Are we actually making progress or not? Let me illustrate the point. I'm going to use a quick opportunity to do a quick poll. As you're looking at this picture, Dave, could you prompt the first poll? Please participate in this poll. Which way is the cat going? And I don't know if you guys can see. I'm going to move this over here so you can see it. Which way is the cat going, up or down? Ah, I see. All right. So a number of you are participating well. Excellent. I'm going to end the poll and just share with you that none of you are right and both of you are right. Let me share with you the answer. The cat's going whichever way we determine the cat is going. And the relevance of that is the fact that, and I'm really grateful to Doctors Robert DuPont and Caroline DuPont and Dr. Bertha Madras, who pulled together these data that are really illustrative of where we are and the impact that we have had in terms of preventing substance misuse among our most vulnerable in our communities. As you're looking at this slide, you're seeing the percentage of high school seniors reporting past month use of various substances, right? Over a large degree of time to be able to indicate the trends. And if you're looking at alcohol, or if you're looking at cigarette use, or if you're looking at marijuana use, and if you're looking at illicit drug use, as you're looking over the course of these years, you are seeing a pretty positive trend, right? You are seeing extraordinary work and progress that have been made among high school seniors reporting past 30-day substance misuse, right? With the exception of marijuana, which is ironically identified in green, where as a result of some important work that was being done in prevention over time, we see that some real progress was being made there until what I would suggest has begun this kind of movement towards legalization and other considerations for marijuana use, where our conversations have become a bit politicized and challenged and muddied, if you will, where there's a lack of clarity on our association with that, right? And so then you see an upward trend here. If I look at this a different way, they asked a different question. They said, of that 30-day trend, of those high school seniors, how many of them abstained from all drug use, right? Alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and other illicit drugs. You see here again, where we started somewhere just above 20% to the fact that almost 50% and even more than 50% as the trend goes higher, a important amount of progress being made. If we look at alcohol misuse among young people between the ages of 12 and 20, you're seeing that same kind of very positive trend taking place. My point in these three slides is to indicate that the prevention work and efforts that you all are been associated with and a part of have been working. Prevention has not failed. Our work has not failed, simply because we are seeing the illusion of mitigating one substance misuse to have new emerging substances of misuse coming to the forefront. We have to be clear about how we articulate about our own success. The fact that prevention works and prevention is the means by which we can protect our most vulnerable. If we're going to do that, though, we have to understand how all of this is being represented within the context of our current situation. And I'm sharing with you that in order to do that and to do that well, we have to reframe how we think about prevention leadership in the midst of that context. So I want to start off by saying that one of the holes in which I see that we are having some challenges, one of the holes that I think needs some mending, is the ways in which we speak about what our role is. When we tend to work in terms of data and charts and looking at our research in the work that we do, and we do it all the time, and it is important and it is essential, I would suggest that there is a clinical aspect to the way we often approach that work, right? There is a clinical aspect when we're looking at charts and bars and numbers associated with the prevalence of this or the prevalence of that, right? We are working within the context of all of that, but but there is nothing clinical. There is nothing sanitized. There's nothing clean about the impact and the actual effect that's happening on our social systems, on our society. In a very real sense, we have to get clear about the fact that this is about consequences that we are trying to address. All of the work that you all are doing are related, are relevant to these very messy consequences that our communities care desperately about. So we have to look at how do we create and draw the connections in the way that we articulate, in the way that we communicate about our role in this work. I want to start off by offering a few ways in which we are, what are we seeing in terms of our current context. So I want to ask you your perceptions about what's going on. And so there are a few polls that I want you to participate in. We're going to go through these rather quickly, but please engage. Dave, could you launch the first poll for us? The first poll really is about, are opioid overdoses increasing or decreasing? And I'm working with a number of folks that are working really clearly in this field, right? So we'll give a few seconds for you all to participate in this. And I see the great majority of you saying that the opioid overdoses are indeed increasing, right? Excellent. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. Next poll, please, Dave. The next poll is prescription opioid misuse now. Is that increasing or decreasing? Prescription opioid misuse, increasing or decreasing? Good, good. I see a mixture of opinions that are going on here, right? So about pretty much 40 to 60%, some saying increasing, more saying that they're decreasing. Excellent, excellent, excellent. We're going to discuss this in just a moment. Good, good. Next poll, please, Dave. The question is marijuana use, increasing or decreasing? Look at you all. This was, I guess, of all of them, this was the gimme, okay? So yes, overwhelmingly, you all are saying that marijuana misuse is increasing in our society. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. Excellent. Dave, I'm sorry. Poll number 4, please. Now I want you to look at gender in terms of this. Is marijuana use among males increasing or decreasing in our society? Increasing, increasing, increasing. Absolutely, right? And so we're going to talk about that in just a bit. Excellent, excellent. And Dave, the last poll, please. Is there a relationship between substance use disorder and mental illness? True or false? All right, overwhelmingly, 100%. Got it, got it, got it, got it. For the most part, excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you for participating in that. So if I could share with you, we're going to talk about these because I think in each of those areas, I'm going to point out where I believe that there are holes in our conversation about the data that we're seeing in our society. We're going to share that. As I'm doing that, I would like you all, if you wouldn't mind, participate in a conversation in the chat box. And what we're interested in is how has COVID-19 affected your priority substance use disorder challenges? And you can frame that and answer that whichever way you would like, all right? But how has COVID-19 affected your priority challenges, okay? As you all are doing that, let me share with you some of the information, some of the data that we are discussing. Hold on, here you go. Sorry about that. So, as you're looking at this, these are data that were just released this past month. And it represents kind of our latest understanding from the Center for Disease Control. There is a clear indication that this trend is continuing to go in an unwanted direction. And in fact, the overdose numbers related to substance misuse in our country has risen is actually increasing. We are still up over 71,000 individuals who have died as a result of a drug overdose in our society. And the projection for this coming year is that we're going to see an increase of 4.8% if things continue to go in the current trend as we are dealing with this. And so as it relates to this, many of you who are on this call will recognize that before we were dealing with a lot of the issues and a lot of challenges that are in the news today, we were all focused almost exclusively on this thing called an opioid epidemic, right? And then at some point, we began to really, in the last few years, pay attention to the dramatic increase that was occurring with vaping and illnesses associated with vaping that was taking place in our communities. As you recall, we were all beginning to turn our attention again to paying attention to these issues. I was only able to grab numbers that happened right before we all got hit with locking in and locking down, but you can see those numbers hitting all of the states. But it's also indicative of the fact that our society is still chasing these illusory gains from one to the next, because we keep going from one crisis to the next crisis. Which brings me to the context that we are in today. All of that work was indicative of all the effort that you all have been involved with and engaged with, that really were bringing you to and stressing our systems as much as our systems could be stretched. We were all having our hands filled with trying to address and mitigate those emerging challenges, right? But as you see here, those challenges are only being exacerbated by our current COVID-19 context. Whether we're talking about smoking or alcohol, relapses, all of this that we are dealing with today are only exacerbating the issues and the challenges within the context of our current society, right? And so where are these holes? Where are the national and narrative holes that we ought to be paying attention to? These data that I'm about to share with you, that I'm about to show you, really come from a presentation by Eleanor McCants-Katz, who is the administrator for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, as she shared with us the latest information from the National Survey on Substance Use and Health, or Drug Use and Health, the NSDA, which is one of the premier reporting instruments for sharing with us and painting for us and providing for us the story of drug use in our society. As you see here, we have more than 46 million people over the age of 18 who are showing and indicating issues and challenges with mental illness, while we have a significant population that is dealing with substance use disorder. Where we are not paying as close attention to, I would suggest, is the fact that there is a growing and increasing number of those who are exhibiting both substance use disorder and mental illness, right? As we look at alcohol and we look at the trends associated with alcohol misuse, we're seeing some positive indications of trends that are going in a positive direction, particularly for our young people and particularly for our young adults as we are looking at this. So there's some positive opportunities here to think about, right? We have no change in alcohol initiation rates for young people since 2015. We have lower rates of alcohol use disorder among those young people as a result of some of the real work that we are doing in prevention, particularly among those like the drug-free communities coalitions who have prioritized alcohol misuse and reporting a 27% reduction among middle school children and a 23% reduction among high school use, right? So we have seen some important progress being made in this area. But as my grandma used to say, when you take 2 steps forward, sometimes you notice that there is often a step back, right? And so when we're looking at those same data and we're looking at illicit substances, we are seeing a dramatic increase from 2017 in marijuana, which is by far the illicit substance that is being misused at the greatest degree in our society, right? We all understand that as we're looking at opioid deaths again, that those were associated with waves that were occurring from the misuse and the of misappropriated prescription practices that then yielded to a rise in heroin taking place in our society, then yielding to the synthetic opioid challenges that we have seen that have devastated our nation. But the challenge here is that we are also now noticing that there are new waves that are happening and occurring involving psychostimulants that are growing across our country in the same way, in the same pattern as we've seen with our opioid misuse. And with that, the big challenge for us, the big hole that I see that we need to rectify is that many of the experts are sharing that policymakers in DC still haven't kept up with some of the emerging issues and the emerging challenges with respect to it. And so here's another hole that requires mending. I would share with you that as we are thinking about opioid misuse as well, that we are also looking at the fact of what we are paying attention to, even within the context of those of us who are trying to attend to preventing it. We have spent a great deal, what you're seeing is a chart that shows people aged 12 and older who have misused prescription pain relievers in the past year, and where they got the source of that opioid, right? And so over here, this blue slice of pie is really representative of those who are getting at it through some prescription practice or some malpractice with respect to prescriptions of opioid use, issues and challenges relating to some of the nefarious ways in which folks are attending to that. But the vast majority of those who are involved and engaged with misusing prescription drugs are sharing that they are getting it through friends or relatives in one way, shape, form, or fashion. My brother, Khalil, passed some more than 10 years ago. And he passed from a disease called sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia causes chronic, severe pain, right? Throughout his life, he had to contend with this. So my brother was actually receiving and taking opioids with potencies and levels that are unimaginable for years. But my brother, with his caring heart and his love in his heart, who also happened to be larger than life in the way that he engaged with the members of our community, was like a walking drugstore. So in my neighborhood, when I grew up, we didn't go to a pharmacy, we didn't go to a doctor to get a prescription when you had something that was bothering you. You went to Khalil, right? And as wrong as that was, and how dangerous that practice was. I would suggest to you that in our communities and in our societies, there are millions of Khalils, and there are millions of us who walk and work with those who are like our Khalils, right? Unwittingly endangering our society. This is our wheelhouse. This is where we can make and really have an impact upon this. I want to move now to another hole in our national narrative. And that hole, this is a phrase that was coined by Dr. Bob DuPont, of commercialized recreational pharmacology, right? I was walking in New York City one day, and I came across this truck, which was blaring music similarly to what you would hear from the ice cream truck that would go into your neighborhoods and playing music to attract attention and attract the children's attention, right? And like that, I saw it had a window, and this lovely young lady stuck her head out, and she said these words. She said, "Hey guy, don't be shy, come get high." That got my attention, right? And the issue here is that while this truck, because it is still illegal to sell anything that has the THC value that would actually cause for people to get high, they're really selling a lie here. But what they are doing is actually promoting a new norm. That's what's happening here. And that's what's going on in the context of our society. Why? Because this issue is actually not about everyone's privacy, right? And the right for everyone to kind of enjoy themselves, but this is actually fueled by a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so while we are having conversations about this, I would recommend to you, such as what is being really offered by our friends at Smart Approaches Against Marijuana, our friends at SAM, that the real issue is about this commercialization that is really taking place in our society, that we are having almost zero conversation nationally about. So here's another hole that I believe requires mending. And why is that important? As we are looking at the data here, I want to suggest to you that if we are attentive to our young adults, those between the ages of 18 and 25, we are seeing a significant increase in past month marijuana use, a trend that's occurring over time. If we are looking even more closely at that trend, right, here is the same data, here's the same data, right? If we look at past daily and past year daily and almost daily use, we are seeing that there is an increase almost daily or daily use that is occurring among the same age group. But what's driving that? We look even closer. Our focus has to be in the right place. So here it goes back to one of the polling questions. Looking at the same 18 to 25-year-olds, if we split them between males and females, what we are actually seeing is that from 2017 to 2018, we're actually seeing a bit of a decrease that is happening, a significant decrease that is happening. But look what's happening over here at our female population. I would suggest to you that new initiates are really coming from our young women who are increasing that trend in a steady way over time. Samson looked at the differences between those who are pregnant and those who are non-pregnant as they looked at those same numbers. And because they paid such important attention to the dangers that were occurring for those women that are pregnant, we are seeing some really positive indications here of numbers going in a positive direction. But look at our non-pregnant population. Here's where we're looking at the drive. I would suggest to you that this is another hole in the fabric of our society that requires attention, requires some mending. The same could be said for that same 18 to 26 population that's represented here in red, of the increasing curve of those in that age group that are experiencing serious mental illness, which is defined as the kind of illness that really impairs someone's ability to perform well in the natural course of their lives. And so that's really showing as an impediment. This can be tracked down to those within that 18 to 25 age group, where they're showing a major depressive episodes. This is when someone is showing for a period of 2 weeks or more, of expressing some symptoms of depression, of loneliness, suicidal thoughts, and the like. Here you see some really concerning trends that are taking place over the last number of years with our 18 to 25-year-old population. So there is no wonder that when it comes to serious thoughts of suicide, those who have actually made a plan for suicide, those who have actually attempted suicide, that we're seeing significant increases in each of those areas over the course of the last 10 years. Which brings me to another big hole, and that hole is around our co-occurring disorders. What's going on in our society is not as a result of looking at any single substance misuse issue or challenge, but the fact that we have to pay attention to where there is increasing evidence that the greater the degree of the impairment or the challenge that our community members are living with, the greater the opportunity is that they're misusing substances as well, that they are mixing those two issues. And that is happening regardless of the substance use that we are talking about and attending to. That same co-occurrence is being documented and designated. So one of the additional holes that we have to attend to is all around mitigating and getting our community to pay attention to what's occurring with these co-occurring disorders that are taking place in our society, right? And the last two that I'll share with you is the fact that we have a serious challenge in helping folks understand that the problem isn't any single issue or single drug misuse, but rather that the challenge really occurs from polysubstance misuse. And that polysubstance misuse really boils down to the fact that all the data that we've been looking at over the last number of years really shows and demonstrates that participation with any substance has a direct relationship with being associated with a higher predictability of their misuse of any other substance misuse. So this isn't about whether or not opioids are worse than marijuana or worse than alcohol or worse than heroin. I'm sorry, are worse than vaping. This is about the fact that any substance misuse is relevant to other substance misuse. This has indication for how we screen, how we question, what it is that we question for at the time that we're screening with those that are coming in and coming through our doors. We also have to build and generate the awareness of our greater society about the importance of paying attention to polysubstance misuse. And lastly, there is no doubt that all of this is contributory to the fact that we are seeing significant gaps in our ability to treat those that are showing these issues that they are contending with. And so numbers as high as 89% of those receiving no treatment, more than 50% of those receiving no treatment. This area and gaps in our treatment is very relevant to our prevention conversations are all necessary for us to attend to. These represent the holes that I believe are being rendered within our society that are requiring some attention. And if we are going to attend to that, we have to make sure that we're able to pay attention to how we approach that. And that's the next part of this conversation. So with that in mind, I want to, I know you all have been in the chat room talking about some of the challenges that you all are seeing. Dave, do you have any that are indicative of some of those challenges that they said that they are dealing with?
Yes, thanks everybody for sharing in the chat box. There were some of those that definitely made my heart feel heavy for y'all. Thank you. The overall themes really were around a lack of connection. There's no access, whether it be for prevention efforts with students or even treatment. And then just the isolation has led to almost a constant state of anxiety and increase in overdoses and depression. And then sort of lastly, the drink deliveries. There's an increase in substance use with restaurants and so forth, delivering drinks. That's a very Cliff Notes summary.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. And thank you all for participating in this conversation that we're wanting to have, to listen and to learn from each other. All of that is important to the notion that if we're going to address this, we really have to reframe how we look at prevention's role in all of this. And so in order to kind of frame this, what I will say to you is that part of the challenge that I see that we've had over the last more than a decade or so is that as we talk about prevention, we tend to talk in terms of these tools, of these frameworks, such as the strategic prevention framework. If we're defining prevention to our greater society, we are talking about communities that care operating system. We are talking about a collective impact. We are talking about a social ecological model. We are talking about the social development strategy. We are talking about an asset-based community development strategy. We're talking about the 40 developmental assets or social investment strategies or the social determinants of health or screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. We are talking in a language that our communities don't understand, right? And what I am suggesting is that all of these are vital, important tools that will enable us to address those holes that we just talked about. But if we're going to do this and do this well, we have to speak in a language that our communities understand. One recommendation is really get clear on how we reframe the way we speak about prevention within the context of our current crisis. I offer you that there are 3 areas that are vitally important. We want to make sure that folks understand that prevention is indeed relevant to preventing deaths, right? Overdose prevention is an important aspect of what it is that we all ought to be caring about and doing, right? We also are looking at mitigating this by redefining how we look at success in our treatment efforts. We're going to redefine success as long-term sustained sobriety. That's the goal for those that are in that. What does that mean? That means that we're actually looking at preventing relapses. Relapses being a natural part of someone's progression through their recovery process, right? We also play a role in that. And then lastly, and most importantly, we have to understand and help folks understand the important and the vital nature of primary prevention in all of this. And that primary prevention doesn't mean that we are prohibitionists. Primary prevention means that we are geared towards a specific goal. That goal is we are preventing addiction, right? That's really the result that we're looking for as we are engaging in the various strategies, practices, policies that we are engaged in. So as we look at this, if we are going to do that, I want to encourage you all as I go through these final sections of this training, how can you reframe your prevention efforts and messaging better to engage the broader community? Dave will be engaging with you in that conversation as I try to take you through what I believe is a helpful opportunity to think about that. And that is, how do we cultivate this thing called transformational leadership to be able to do that? So as you all engage in the conversation, that conversation is really born out of the fact that right now in our current context, this is the model for public health that we've all been kind of engaged in, participating in. Many of you are very familiar with this. The challenge with this is that for the most part in our society, each one of these areas are areas of specialization, and we are operating in silos. And what is being required of us now is transformational leadership that will help us to bridge the relationship and the accountability of those systems with and to each other. If we're going to do that, we are required to have leadership that is necessary for doing that. And so the kind of leadership that we are most familiar with in our society are really based on kind of these four areas. And the first three are really talking about what has often been referred to as transactional leadership, right? Whether it's autocratic, where someone sees themselves as making all the decisions, or managerial, where you're really interested in looking at the effectiveness of your process, or democratic, right? Where you actually bring in others and you consult with others and you make decisions, though, by yourself, to what is now what we're paying attention to, a much more collaborative sense of that leadership. And that's where transformational leadership really comes into play. Frances Butterfass kind of alludes to transformational leadership as she describes kind of the real importance of coalitions in their work, as requiring a collection of personal qualities and skills that cannot be found in one individual, but rather it requires a group to be able to do that with the interests of the grassroots in mind. I like this important distinction, though, with transformational leadership and its relevance and relationship to our work. Leafwood indicated that this is the kind of leadership that facilitates the redefinition of a people's mission and vision. In other words, what we're really talking about here is leadership that leads to behavioral change for the broader populace, for the broader population. How do we do that, right? What has been kind of suggested in the literature around transformational leadership is that if we are going to lead and have that kind of an influence, that kind of an effect, transformational leadership is really born out of exhibiting specific behaviors, pursuing specific behaviors that fall into these four categories, right? The four categories, all of which kind of start with the letter I, right? For some alliteration, I guess, when they brought up this. But one is idealized influence, right? This is another word for charisma. What they're really talking about, the kind of skills that are necessary that really help promote that you become a role model, and a strong role model. A strong role model is in terms of the work ethic that you're bringing to it, in terms of your moral and ethical kind of non-compromising nature of that. And your ability to convey that we're all in this together and that there's this common sense of mission, right? That's idealized influence. The second category of behaviors that is exhibited in transformational leadership is what they refer to as inspirational motivation. This is when you have and develop the capacity of being clear about your vision and your ability to articulate that vision in a way that compels others to join your cause, right? And in a way that also challenges others. There's a sense of challenge that is provoked by the way you articulate that vision and mission. Which brings me to the third category, which is intellectual stimulation. And in intellectual stimulation, we're really kind of talking about the ability of the leadership to create an environment and a context that challenges folks to bring their best creativity to mitigating the problems and the challenges that are occurring, that is the focus of your group. And then that leads to the last bit of behaviors, which is identified under the category of individualized consideration. And in these set of categories, what set of behaviors, what you're really talking about is how you as a leader are providing the kind of coaching that's necessary, the kind of support that's necessary, the kind of help that's necessary, so that your followers believe that you are attending to them individually, that you get a sense of who they are individually and are compelled to work within that. That kind of leadership, as I shared with you before, really suggests that you are exhibiting each of these areas that we talked about before. That's what happens, right? And I'm gonna be very, very clear. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be Dr. King to be a transformational leader. You could be a Dr. Wanda Boone. And I feel privileged to be able to share her picture. As I've worked with her as a colleague for years, she's an extraordinary leader in your state, leading an important and one of the most effective community kind of efforts together for resilient youth, and is really truly representative of this. I want to make sure that you understand that this transformational leadership is not some unattainable ideal, but rather something we should all embody. And as we do that, when you do that, you will see within your coalition context, actions happening, coaching, supporting, delegating, sharing, role modeling. These kinds of actions are the results of some real attention being paid to the way you are sculpting or managing the kind of leadership that we are talking about. So,
Carlton, we have about 10 minutes.
I got you. Thank you so much, Virginia. So, as I'm sharing this, what I will say to you is that this brings us to the fact that building transformational leadership requires looking at your organization in a transformational way and looking at how you are cultivating your leaders within that context. Building your coalition requires looking at a vision. We understand the importance of vision, but the considerations for this is do coalition leaders know and own that vision? How is that vision being promoted in your coalition or your organization? As you're looking at the roles and responsibilities in your organization, transformational leadership suggests that you're considering the leadership roles that are designed. Are you creating job descriptions that promote transformational leadership? Are you making sure that you're matching the right folks to the right positions? If you're looking at your organizational structure and all of the roles that are considered, you are thinking about them from a transformational context. You're asking whether or not that organizational structure allows for the appropriate delegation of the work. So it's not the too and few doing all of the work. And if you're looking in the context of your planning efforts, is your work actually involving engaging others in that planning and making sure that they are part of the design of those plans? And then lastly, in your decision-making, are you in your decision-making capabilities looking at where in your organizational structure is the best place and what are the best methods for decision-making to occur? You think about decision-making practices before you actually begin the work of that entity, of that organization. That's all associated with transformational leadership, building skills that are necessary. What are those skills that are important to you? What's the best way that you can bring those skills? Transformational leadership is not something that you hire. Transformational leadership is something that you can develop. And in the context of cultivating transformational leadership, I don't want to miss the fact that you also want to engage young people as transformational leadership by being proactive and thinking about how you do so. And so, hold on. I want to get to this part here where each of you come with your own leadership styles and in that leadership capacity. Those leadership styles are either you're facilitating, guiding and listening and facilitating, you're guiding, you're encouraging the feedback of others, you are providing instruction, you're combining your telling with your asking. Empowering, you clarify, You give support. You monitor indirectly, but you bring in, you come in, and you jump in when difficulties arise. And directing, you make sure that you give clear and extensive instructions, right? So each of us lean towards a typical leadership style in one way or the other, right? We all do some of this some of the time, depending on the circumstances, but I'm interested in what's your particular leadership style that you typically lead towards, if I'm asking you to think about yourself. So those of you who can participate, please indicate so in the poll. Which is your particular leadership style? I'm seeing a good mix, but empowering seems to be coming on top. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I just wanted to offer this as a way of helping you to understand that there is no wrong answer here. None of these are better than the other, but in fact, all of them represent things that we need to attend to, and if we are attending to them, if we attend to them, each of them plays a role in how we actually have the ability to bring transformational leadership to the context of our organization or organizational setting. By understanding our typical leadership style, it will influence and impact the way we recruit new leaders, the way we cultivate the existing ones, the way we look at decision-making, how we delegate or not, and the way we think about involving and engaging the broader community in the context. All that is required if we're going to render some help and some support to the holes that we are seeing in the fabric of our society, as I indicated before. I want to share with you all that I think, that as you take this home, there you go. As you take this home, I want you to think about conducting this work, having a discussion about transformational leadership and these concepts in the context of the work that you're doing. Take an opportunity with your group to design what you think the ideal transformation or transformed organization might list up. Think about those characteristics and which 2 or 3 or 4 can you build into the context of your work. And by all means, prioritize engagement. Prioritize the ability to reach beyond ourselves, to reach out to our broader community constituents. I see we're here to help you all to be able to do some of that. This is our contact information. I want to end with the fact that on today, I'm so privileged and honored to be talking to you about this quality of transformational leadership in the context of our nation celebrating probably one of the greatest Americans that ever walked this country and epitomized the qualities of transformational leadership. I had the great privilege of walking alongside of him when we both were invited to participate in the grand entrance of the grand powwow for the Cherokee Nation a number of years back. It was my extraordinary honor to spend a good bit of time with Congressman Lewis and to hear and learn and listen with and from him during that time. And I will share with you that in his words to me, he shared this thought that he shared many times. He shared that ours is not the struggle of one day or 1 week or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or even maybe several lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part. And then he thanked me, which is mind-boggling for what he perceived to be as my doing my part. I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for getting into good trouble, for agreeing to do your part as we try to mitigate the issues and the challenges that are facing our society. Thank you all so much. God bless you all. And I am on time with respect to this. I go it and throw it back to you. Virginia, thank you so much for the opportunity. Or Debbie, thank you so much for this opportunity. I I turn the mic over back to you for ending the conversation.
Wow. Thank you, Carlton. I think everybody's probably literally in their own home. We're all virtually clapping, so I'll do it so maybe you can hear me. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. And particularly, we also thank Southeast Prevention Technology Transfer Center again for providing Carlton here for us today. And something to tell all of y'all too, you'll be excited. Carlton has graciously agreed to allow this session here to be recorded. So we're going to be placing it on our NCFADS website within 24 hours. So he went over a lot of information. If you want to go back and view it again, you can certainly do such and just take more time and pay attention for that. Also, some information just to tell you here, so that you'll be aware of this. Credit is very important here to you, I know. You will have to complete an evaluation. It is part and parcel of our credit process for this virtual training here. So, number one, an evaluation will be emailed to you Friday afternoon after the last session. It is required to be completed so you receive any credit. Okay? It is required. It's part of the whole attendance verification process. By 2 weeks later, every one of you will receive a customized certificate for the total sessions that you attend and the certificate that you signed up for. That will be emailed after August 10th. After August 10th, okay? So another thing to tell you too is not to do with credit. Hopefully that's clear. You will receive a link each day for that next day's webinar. So today at 2 o'clock, around 2 o'clock, you'll receive a link for tomorrow's webinar. So we are looking forward to you joining us tomorrow as we hear from Dr. Daryl Anaba for another outstanding presentation. Thank you all again for being with us today. We will look forward to seeing you tomorrow and the rest of the week. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton. That was wonderful.
Thank you.